Welcome back, everybody, to the Wall Street Coach podcast. I want to first thank our sponsor, Opal Securities, for this, for me to be able to have these interviews. I want to welcome Bryce Tuohey to my podcast. How are you, Bryce?
Good. How are you, Kim?
I'm doing great, doing great. Very excited to have you on the Wall Street Coach podcast. We've been circling each other for years. Finally met in person at the Traders for a Cause conference. Had a really good conversation then. But one of the things I've always loved about you, Bryce, even at a distance, is your enthusiasm. It is so inspiring.
Appreciate that. I try my best. You got to stay upbeat, right?
I would agree. But yours is just like it's so bright. You're like you're like the sun when you walk into a room. You just lighten everybody up. It's true.
Appreciate it.
It's the truth. It's the truth. So in addition to him lighting up lots of rooms, I want to just speak a little bit about his formal bio. Of course, he's a mentor and trainer at stockstotrade.com, which is where we originally kind of had each other's cruise ships pass in the night. And he is also the lead mentor at Small Cap Rockets and To the Moon Report. His expertise is in developing educational content for penny stock traders. From 2017 to 2020, Bryce studied logistics, materials, and supply chain management at the Rochester Institute of Technology. And he did drop out of school to pursue trading. So I think what we'll do is kind of start there. Tell us how you became so enamored with trading that after those years and money spent on a very incredible school. Rochester Institute of Technology has a great reputation. What happened that had you make that leap?
Well, it was a lot of things. So while I was at school, I was trying to do a lot. I was actually for a little bit of that time playing basketball at school. I was a full-time student, of course, but I was also a freelance writer. So I'd write like blogs and emails and all that stuff because I was, trying to pay my way through school, do like unpaid, they were paid internships, but it was like $15 an hour, which wasn't going to complain about over a summer.
Yeah.
But I wanted like a different way to make money, I guess. I enjoyed having my own flexibility. And at school, I met Matt Monaco, which some people might be familiar with him. And we were actually roommates. So he was like getting into trading stocks. And I was like, well, this seems like a way I could be my own boss. So during all that, I was also trying to learn to trade, and naturally every now and then balances got shifted a bit. Sometimes I'd put less focus into school or less focus into writing. Eventually I stopped playing basketball due to an injury. So that actually helped free up some time. But so as I was going farther into school, there was this class that stuck out to me, and I don't even remember it was some type of economics course, like super specific, like environmental economics, but we were learning about sunk cost. And essentially the idea is that, regardless of how much money or time that you've spent, does that make continuing to spend that money or putting in that effort going forward still worth it? And so I'm getting towards like the last year or so of my schooling. And I was like, well, the market's really hot right now. I'm not quite sure. I wasn't profitable as a trader yet, but it's like it seems like if there's any time to at least give it a try, I was making enough money from the writing to, pay my bills at least. This seems like the time to do it. I can always go back to school. Like I've got a semester or two left. Well, and it was mostly general education classes too. I'd done most of my, it was supply chain and logistics. I'd done most of that like specialized class. So I just said, I think I'm just going to give it a try. It was the summer of 2020. COVID was just going on. It was really strange because I decided I was like, I'm going to tell my parents, not that they really had a say. I was paying my own way through school, but I was like, I'm just going to let them know. And they were the only two people that were like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Everyone else, yeah, super strange.
Now, what do you attribute that to, that they were able to step into supporting you?
Well, they've both very entrepreneurial-minded people. I guess they, both have worked multiple jobs. They both have owned their own businesses before. And so I think they've always kind of just had that inkling to be like, it'd be a little bit more risky because what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
Like, at the end of the day, you're not going to die because you made a bad decision. Well, in this sense. You make a bad decision, your life is still going to go on. The world's still going to be spinning, right? So I think that was it. And I explained the same thing to him. I was like, I can always go back. It's not, it was more like I'm taking a break, I guess, than anything else. And I don't know. I guess the other way I look at it too is, you know, when I was in school and spending money for a degree, I feel like in the end, what I really spent money on was just getting really lucky and meeting some great connections that introduced me to trading. Like I do think, because had I not gone to school there, I don't think I would have met Matt Monaco or been as close or really cared as much. So I think in a way I got a lot of value out of that money spent, just not for what I intended to spend it on.
Good point. Really good point. And I think if it's okay, I just want to go back to having parents or support. A supportive tribe is probably going to be very dependent on that tribe having been in a entrepreneurial mindset and not having, if your parents were, you know, very much 9-to-5 workers or corporate climbers, it's possible they would not have been able to be so encouraging.
It's likely they wouldn't have been so encouraging, I think. It's a very strange exception to the rule here, but I'm so fortunate. I don't know if it would have changed much in terms of me doing it, but just like the belief, I think, you know, goes a long way. Just knowing like, okay, I know who believes in me now. You know what I mean? Like I know who's got my back here.
Correct. And to especially have them be the only ones who did support you. Like that resistance is so influential over so many traders, even if it's just a drip of self-doubt.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I also, sometimes I think I probably get a little off topic here, but I've definitely learned like, I liked the energy of the kind of doubtfulness from a lot of other people, I think, because then in the same breath, it drove me like I've got something to prove to, which is a little stupid because at the end of the day, I know I don't actually have anything to prove other than to myself, but like that it feeds into it for sure. I really, even to this day, I say that's like my biggest strength is when I'm doubted. I'm not someone that gets backed into a corner. I just like when people don't believe in it.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, like in the pearl is that like, you know, little bit of issue that rubs up against the shell, and that's what creates the pearl. So I think that's just part of the contrast of how we're built. You say, I can't do it. Let me show you that I can. I think it's just that competitive, like, oh, I have some resistance here. Let me see, can I push myself beyond my comfort zone?
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. And I guess so. Yeah. At the end of the day, that's kind of my dropout story. I actually got really lucky, right? Because the market was so hot and I was able by December to make enough money doing that where I didn't really need to work my writing job anymore. I did write up until like November, December or so, but it got to a point where it was just like, okay, I don't have to do this anymore.
Yep.
I still enjoy it. I mean, I write for fun now, which is pretty cool.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you enjoy writing, and do you have opportunities to still write?
Yeah. So I've recently, actually, mostly after Traders for a Cause, got back into journaling a bit. I was like in not just like trading journaling, just, you know, writing out what's going on. And I'm not regimented with it or anything, but when something comes to mind, what I don't do as much of anymore, I used to in school, when I was even high school, I'd love like writing essays and like short stories just for fun. I've tried doing that like once or twice, and I will go crazy for 5, 6, 7 hours and never open that document again. But sometimes it's nice just to get the thoughts out. You know what I mean? And it's always there if I want to go back to it.
Absolutely. And, you know, maybe, I mean, you know, this me putting my coaching hat on a little bit. What would it be like for you to write your story, like about your journey through college and into trading? That I think would be an incredible opportunity to share the journey, but also allow you to express yourself.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this a couple of times. I've had a couple other people and mentors kind of ask the same thing, like, you should write it out. And I agree with that. But and this is where I think it gets a little bit, I don't want to say like a toxic mindset thing, but I feel like I feel like I'm in the middle of my book right now. You know what I mean? In terms of where I'm at progression wise.
Totally.
And I kind of want to see how the rest plays out before I start writing like formally, although that's actually one of the bigger journal entries I did not too long ago, was really breaking down like year by year, kind of reflecting what were those pivotal moments, because it's led me to where I'm at now. And I don't know, I think keeping that fresh in the back of the mind really helps push me forward. It certainly has the last few months.
It's like you're observing yourself right now, and you know that there's more that you're going to be creating. And so you want to finish creating that.
Of course, the problem with that is you never really stop, right?
Well, maybe you put a balance there. Maybe you put a cap. Maybe you give yourself a year or 3.
And that's a good point. That's a great point.
Right.
I like that.
Okay, you got a runway of 2 to 3 years. And then at that point, I'm going to send you an email and say, okay, let's see where you're at.
And let's write the start of this book at the very least.
That's right. Absolutely. Because if you love writing and you enjoy it, I think that potentially becomes bringing together 2 worlds you love, trading and writing.
Well, I think, and I think when you can do that and putting both of them together, I think it just can provide a lot of mental clarity for sure, and for sure. I don't know. I'm still figuring out like the mental side of a lot of this, but it's, I will say, like, it's really cool trying to put some of these things you read about mental clarity into practice, and actually trying to get that mental clarity every day versus just reading how to do it, which I've done for a while.
100%. And you spoke to this in one of the tweets you put up. I think it was all the way back in September. Was it September? No, I think it was actually November. You spoke about you're shifting from the long bias to being a short bias, having to learn, in a sense, you said trading all over again. And you spoke to not only that and having to size down and having to update your, having proper risk management for that style, but you also spoke to doing a ton of journaling. So I wanted to talk about all of that, if you're open to it, and what that journaling looks like, because I think a lot of traders know they should be journaling at the end of their trading day, but they don't actually do it, like you alluded to a moment ago. So let's take it to the moment where you decided to go from long to short. Let's just start there.
Well, yeah. So I don't know if it was kind of a culmination of moments, I guess, just because I've been very fortunate, in previous, I guess the last hot market, to earning the right to be a little bit lazy, just kind of explore outside of trading and getting to do other things, which was awesome, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But then it's like what I would basically did was become a part-time long bias trader. When the markets were hot, I'd get back into it. And my problem was during that's probably 2 years or so, right? I feel like I lost a lot of touch with risk management. So I would do great for 2 weeks while the market was hot, and then give half of it back in 2 or 3 days. And it's like, oh no, I don't like this. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel like actually working. This feels a little bit more degenerate. And I did that a couple of times. While I was, doing business and some real estate, on the side. And so finally, I don't know what about it clicked, but it was like, okay, I'm not really happy doing any of this other stuff right now. It's not, I feel like what I'm doing is investing a lot of money, but basically for a job. You know what I mean? It felt like I was not owned, but yeah, anyways, it felt more like a job than it did doing this because I love it. And so after probably 4 months of just sitting there thinking, I was like, I really want to start taking this more seriously. And I don't want it to just be a hot market trader when the market's hot for a week or two and there's a hot sector going on. So what am I going to do here? And I think what I realized is a lot of what I accomplished during the COVID market, it was largely influenced by how hot the market was in and of itself. It wasn't, I don't want to discredit myself too much, but I think a lot more of it was that the market was hot than that I was doing a ton of journaling and had a lot of data to back why I was taking an entry here. It was just a lot of stocks went up, a lot of stocks ran, and there was a lot of technical analysis, but that was about all I needed then. Yeah. So now what I wanted to do is say, okay, market is heating up right now, not COVID level hot per se, but it's heating up. And I think I can have a lot more of an edge on the short side. I've been still, of course, being in tune with the market over the past few years. I've seen a lot of edge on the short side, and I figured I'm going to give this a try. And the main reason I wanted to do that was so that I could try to treat trading like a game again. And that's what I think really helped when I was during, May of 2020 to December of 2020 was I wasn't really looking at it like money because I had money coming in. So it was more like points. It was just, I wanted to try to do, and that's how my brain works very well. I don't know if it's a little bit of ADHD or whatever it might be. You can't tell by the lack of pauses in my sentences, but no. So I just figured if I size down, learn a new strategy and force myself to journal a bit, who cares if it's $50 or $100 or $200? It's points. And I want to see that chart going up in the right way versus saying I'm doing this for a paycheck.
Yeah.
So as probably again, like 3 or 4 months of kind of thinking all of these all together, I said, all right, just going to try it. Just size way down, drop my account size down so I can't oversize on, well, I guess I could oversize, but I wanted to put myself like pretty close to PDT. So it'd be annoying to keep refunding it every time.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, since then, that's kind of the pre-journaling side of this, I guess, was the game stuff. And then how do you do better in a game? Well, you practice, right? I don't care what game it is. If it's basketball or Fortnite or you practice. And that can mean obviously practicing live, maybe live in the market, but there's also a lot of work you can do outside of it. Some of the best like video game players, they'll go and study other people's techniques, their strategies. For me, I just want to study what's working for my strategy. And that's where I think the journaling comes in. We can dig a little bit more into that, but I'm going to pause really quick.
Yeah, no, it's fabulous. This is what I wanted you to talk about, because I feel like you are kind of bringing us back to what you talked about with the naysayers. It's almost like you saw your own contraction, or you weren't really fully being all you knew you were capable of. And you, after 4 months, were like, wait a minute, I want to actually prove that I do know what I'm doing. So I'm going to kind of take this engine apart and rebuild it with a different motive. That is a very, not everybody would have done that, Bryce. It really is impressive.
It is, but and I've also, I think the last 2 years, I went through a lot of self-development, through a lot of pain, through a lot of mistakes that I made outside of the market. And I think I don't want to get too deep into this, but I definitely hit like this kind of breaking point where, like you said, I'm not living up to the potential of where I can be.
Yeah.
I want to be better, not just in terms of being a better trader, but I want to feel fulfilled. And it just feels like I found that when things were going really well, and I felt like I earned the right to be lazy, and I did be lazy, and it was fun being lazy, but it wasn't fulfilling being lazy.
Yes.
And you get so used to that for 2 years that at some point it's just like, okay, who am I going to be? Am I going to be a couch potato that's like, I don't know. Or am I going to be someone that puts in a lot of work? I mean, I was like hopping back on trading simulators again. You know what I mean? Like going through and just saying like, how did this trade work this day?
Wow.
What about in just like the little stuff? And I think finding that obsession over the detail, maybe not over the details, but finding a way to get obsessed with it. If you can do that, you can do anything. And I'm still working on getting there. I don't know what proving myself will be this time, but continual progression, I guess, is the proof.
I think that's part of perhaps it's a very different approach of climbing a mountain versus have to get to the top with the flag. It sounds like what you're doing is enjoying the climb, enjoying every part of the journey to the point where you put yourself back into climbing a different side of that mountain, and to just be present to how can I become the best version of myself in this scenario, in that scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I think it can be fun if you do it right. But I also understand, some people literally might not be able to, for traders who are just getting started, it's going to be harder to look at it that way if you haven't even climbed the mountain yet. You don't really know what that looks like. It is, I guess, maybe a little bit unique in that sense, but I don't know.
But that I feel part of what your journey is speaking to is how if you are less attached to the, here you are, a trader that has done so well for himself, and yet you're taking time to go into simulation. If that is happening for someone at your level of success, I still feel that is a huge lesson for traders they get almost so attached to the way it has to go that they don't even get to enjoy the process. And I get that there's the financial pressure and metaphor gun to the head, but that is part of what takes them so long. And yet here you are like, hey, I'm going to take a really good look at how am I really as great as I could be at this? And how do I mix it up? That's what I feel like allowed you to potentially, now you have the option, and I'm curious, to be a long bias trader or a short bias trader. So tell us how you judge which one you're going to step into. Is it just market conditions? Is it also your mental game?
It's largely market conditions. And I mean, truth be told, the way that if I look at both of my profit charts for the last, for reference, I guess August 1st was the day that I dropped the account size down and dropped risk and just focused primarily on shorts. I did still long. I'd say like roughly 30% of my trades since then have been on the long side. But if you look at the P&L charts of long versus short over that time frame, what you'll see is this for long, one big shoot up and a lot of sideways. And for short, it's just nice and smooth. Now I am I am placing a very, very heavy emphasis on risk management. This sounds awful, but I've been really fortunate to have seen some of my, I think some of the best traders I know risk almost losing it all because of one slip up. And knock on all wood, I've done everything in my power to keep my size small enough and keep that scaling small enough. But
right.
The reason I say that is because what I like about the short side is it is a lot more system driven. It's a lot more data driven. And that's how my journal really reflects now, I think, differently than it once did. It's mainly just like, what trends worked in this? Was there what statistic, what risk level might be the consistent variable? It's high of day, pre-market high, whatever, the best risk level, where's the best entry spot? With longs, though, the problem I feel like is a lot of the best longs really stem from just a hot market. I still feel that way. So, we've had a couple, Bitcoin and quantum computing, and then early August, we had monkeypox too. Ironically, my best longs are all sector-driven longs. They're, VRAX was the monkeypox one. I don't remember if it was QCOM. I think QCOM for one of the quantum computing stocks, BTCS for the Bitcoin. I mean, so what I'm seeing is that, and I'm trying to figure out rules for this still, because today I took a little bit of a smacking on the long side, which just made me look back and say, okay, there wasn't really anything all that hot going on today. And I think more than anything, I missed the morning. Mm-hmm. And so I still had that, mental thing of I want to trade. And I'm still trying to get rules down for that. Whereas on the short side, I have a lot of rules already done. I have a lot, that's why I don't really short in the afternoon. If it's holding up too on the afternoon, I don't want to be short.
Yeah.
So in terms of what makes a good long versus short for me, or I guess what that differentiating factor is, I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm still trying to get the technicals and the specifics down on the long side, but large theme, it's a really hot market sector still. And that's ironically hasn't changed over the last 3 years. I feel like the past couple months, and then like a day like today is like reminiscent of, okay, longs have been hot, take a couple bad trades, lose too much, get mad, take a break. This time I'm just not taking a break. I'm just going to not take stupid longs tomorrow.
I love that you brought up having been a witness to those traders who are very excellent at what they do, make one mistake and come close to ending their ability to trade. Talk a little bit about why you think that is important to be present to for any trader.
Well, on the short side, it's incredibly important to be. So what I don't remember PGHL. Yes, I do. PGHL the other day. All it takes is one mistake, and it doesn't even have to be your fault. I mean, the stock halted. This was like this Chinese stock, right? And the other, I don't know, 2 weeks ago maybe, and it opened up at like $20 a share. It halted at like $18 at 9:38 in the morning. And then at 4 p.m., it opened up at like $200. And all it takes is being oversized. And weirdly enough, I was actually short that stock in the morning, but I was short 15 shares. Like, because I've seen that happen enough. I basically said, okay, if this drops 10, $15 a share, it'll be a nice little wallet patter. I did not expect it to open up at $200, but it also wouldn't have been the end of the world.
Right.
Could it have opened up at 2,000? Sure. And then that might have been a little bit worse. But I say that because, or I show that example because that's the risk of what can happen. I mean, that, as rare as it does wipe people's trading accounts out. And that's where I think understanding sectors, for example, like when these Chinese stocks are running, you got to be careful with those because they are very easily manipulated versus stocks that, have a super high float and they're a fine company and they've just gapped up a little bit too much. Maybe you can take a little bit more size in that. But that PGHL, that's one example of where not even like risk management, just understanding the nature of that sector versus, another way of looking at it is not stopping out and adding higher. There are so many different variables that can lead to a blow up on the short side. And, I'm probably sounding ignorant right now or arrogant. So there probably are ones that I'm not even thinking of that, hey, for all I know, it could happen. And that's why I want to keep my size small every step of the way, accounting for something like that.
Yeah.
But the same can happen on the long side. You could be in a stock and it has a news pending halt and it opens down 95% and you're in margin, you're in the trade in margin. I've seen that happen too. They both happen. And that's why capital position management is also part of risk management. Anyways.
Yep. No, it's perfect. And I feel a part of what, you are always doing, at least on your Twitter feed, and I'm sure in all of your episodes there, you're speaking to the challenges you face. You're speaking to the places where you struggled. Even, that was another thing you said. It was a really rough month back in September. And you said, that you got overly aggressive, that you let your risk management slip, and that you also spoke about your focus being kind of split based on you creating some other things for yourself personally. So I think that honesty, I'm not saying that traders don't express themselves honestly, but I think sometimes the traders out there on X have a tendency to just focus on the days that everything is good.
No.
And they don't. They don't necessarily talk
Say
about
it ain't so.
But it's not so good. So I thank you for your authenticity because I think it makes the traders who are still new not feel so isolated or the odd man out. And I think also when you do it publicly for any of us, it just makes people be like, oh, he's human.
100%. And I think there's also something in the back of my mind, if I'm probably a little selfish here, but like, I'd rather show my mistakes because then I know more people are doubting me a little bit. I'm not being praised for, I would rather be doubted and good than praised and bad. You know what I mean? 100%. It's like, and there's a balance, of course, but yeah, I mean, there are a lot of new traders that are going to make the same exact mistakes that everyone makes, no matter how well you're doing. It's part of the game. It's mitigating those mistakes and, honestly being open and honest with yourself. Most traders don't lose because they're making, I don't want to say they're making too many mistakes. They lie to themselves about the mistakes that they're making a lot of times. They don't want to admit it. Admit it. We all do it. And then it's a lot easier to mitigate them after you've admitted to yourself. I don't know. That's my opinion.
For sure. So let's just, because my focus is obviously on someone's mental performance, what do you think informs them lying to themselves, not wanting to be with that hard truth when they do make mistakes?
What did you say? What do you think forms them wanting to lie to themselves?
Yeah. What would cause them to lie to themselves?
Oh, I don't actually know if I can really even answer why, because I've thought about that a lot. Because, like I said, for the past 2 years, in a way, I feel like I was lying to myself a lot of times. Just like, nah, it's all good. It's fine. I don't need to be a trader. I've got great investments, and that's true. I don't need to, but I want to be.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference. I think is like, that's why I don't know, because I think it just took me deciding to not want to lie to myself anymore. And I haven't quite figured out why yet.
Yeah.
I focus a lot on like the what can I do and how can I do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to focus on the why before. And every time I get caught up in the why too much, I feel like I start spiraling a little bit, because I don't know if I'm being too like presumptuous or like assuming too much, or if that makes it all any sense.
100%. And it's funny that I asked that question with the why, because I'm actually a huge advocate that we eradicate why from our self-talk and use the word what instead.
I think about this all the time, Kim. Me
right?
too.
Why lends itself to us feeling like we have to justify and defend ourselves. So if we say, why did I do that? It's going to put us into a contraction. But if we say, I wonder what's going on, it lends to being more curious and neutral.
Well, and I think a lot of times too, when you start getting caught up in the why, it's just a game of perspective. I mean, like, versus what is super objective. What happened? This happened. Exactly. Now you can be the judge if you want to think, why did, but when you get caught up in that, your perspective for your why, whatever that means to you, is going to be different than the next person's, the next person's. But all of those whats will be the same. Exactly. Right? Exactly. So that's kind of where I get into thinking about that. Yeah.
And I think ultimately just, the questioning of that, not being honest with oneself, I'm kind of fascinated by that, because the heart of the matter is just, what does it take on the mental game side for a trader to be able to handle the losses, handle the challenges that are inevitably going to come? What do you feel are the outlier qualities they need to develop to have what it takes to go the distance? What do you feel has helped you, and or what you would like to see them work on?
Well, I'm going to answer this probably in a couple of different ways here, but I will start off by saying, regardless, I think like you said, a lot of traders and people probably in general, not just traders, but like, if you're lying to yourself, it will be very clear that you're doing that if you pop out a journal and write, like, and you face every single win and loss that you're looking at. Say, oh, I didn't even realize how much it's so easy to forget about your losses and really cling on to your wins, I think. And I don't know if it's like a natural thing in the brain, but like when they're out in front of you every day, it's so much easier. It's like when you think about that one like traumatic or embarrassing memory that you buried deep in you, and you're like, you can feel it in your heart. When you do that every day, it's like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. You know what I mean? And so and I know it's tough, because I think the hard part is actually just doing it consistently. And this is something I've started saying a lot to not just myself and my students, but like, I don't know, everyone that I care about. It's like, it really is just a mindset game, because the truth is, you can journal for 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. It doesn't need to be this overly complex thing. It's just getting it done every day. And I think a lot of traders make it seem like it needs to be this 2 hour process. Let that hour or 2 hours come to you naturally. You should want to do that after you get in the zone. Like, when I get in the zone, I don't plan on doing it. It's just, I know I have some free time, and all of a sudden I'm 2 hours in. It's like, whoa, so much just happened.
Wow.
And I don't think that would happen if I tried to force it. I'd lose interest so quickly.
Yep.
And it's the same with anything. If you want to put on, if you want to go put on muscle, you go to the gym every day. It's not going to be going to the gym once for 4 hours, calling it quits. I ate healthy one day of the week, and no, it's every day you do something little. Anyways,
Yep.
super probably convoluted way of answering that, but
no, great answer. Great answer. I think it spoke so much to how journaling, even done briefly but consistently, is going to reveal yourself to yourself. I think
absolutely,
huge fact. So I have a lot more questions. We are going to go do an X space in a few minutes, but I think my last question is, I just want to understand more about the converted box truck. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, funny enough, when I was at like not funny enough, this isn't that funny, but when I was like a really mentally low spot, like trying to working on a business that working on business and real estate that I had put myself into, and realized I was in over my head. When I was I was like, what are the things that make me happy? Trading. And well, I've always wanted to, back when I was in high school, I wanted to buy a school bus and do like a school bus conversion thing. Yeah. And I don't fit in them. I'm a little bit too tall for them. So I was like, okay, well, I've always wanted to do this. I do love to travel. I love road trips. Now is the time to do it. Now I want to make myself happy. And I wanted to do it mostly by hand, by myself, but help my friends and family, because I like making things hard on myself. And I figured that's a fun one to make things hard on. Learn how to use power tools. It's not aimlessly making things hard for no reason. It's actually got some purpose. So as we started building it, I was like, well, this would be a lot of fun to actually trade in too. So at this point, now it's like, I almost did the interview in that truck, but it's pouring rain outside and I couldn't get Starlink set up in time. But yeah, it's like just about done. The plan is just like travel all over the country and trade stocks, live in it. I'd like to be like 6 to 8 months in it at a time, or next year is kind of the goal. Stay away from home as much as I can and just see places, meet new people. I think adding perspective is everything. And I think that's a really cool way to do it.
Route 66, man. You just drive Route 66 and that's
our first trip.
America. Oh,
that's the first trip.
I love it. I think you're going to have to come back when you're on that road trip and let us have like a little taste of what it's like to live in that box truck. I want a little tour of it. Okay.
100%. I'm totally down.
Okay, good. I love out west. I've driven a lot out west, Grand Canyon, Bryce, all these. And I did it all in Ford Mustang convertible. This is years ago. But along those journeys, I ran into this family that moved to the U.S., at least for whatever they're allowed to stay. And he got this huge camper, and it was just a family of 4, and they were driving across the U.S. for like 6 months, going to every state. And it was like this tiny little petite family in this gigantic camper. They slept, they ate, they played games, they ate food, and like everything was in this tricked out fancy camper, and they were having the time of their life.
Oh, 100%. It's cool you still remember it. I hope that's how people remember me when they come across me. I met this goofball who's trading stocks, driving around the country in a box truck.
I think when people are doing what makes them happy, they stick in your mind. And that's what it sounds like you're doing for yourself, Bryce.
Working on it. I'm getting there, which is really cool.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. All right. So we're going to move on over to X now. Thank you for this part 1 of this 2-part podcast. I'm going to close it up now. Where can people find you, Bryce, before we shut it down?
Yeah. Mostly Twitter, Trader Bryce on Twitter. Also, I've got a mix of box truck videos and trading videos on my YouTube channel, which is also Trader Bryce. There'll probably be more box truck videos moving forward if anyone's interested in that. There will be trading in there, of course, as well.
That's perfect.
And yeah, also within small cap rockets is the other.
Great. Perfect. Thank you for coming on this podcast. And I'm looking forward to the little tour of that box truck when you're ready for it. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I'll see you over on X.
Awesome. Perfect. I hope you have subscribed to the Wall Street Coach podcast. And if you haven't, it's time to do so. See you on the next podcast.